You don't belong here. First class is not for kids like you. The words tore through the airplane cabin like thunder, echoing down the aisle with the sting of humiliation and arrogance. Every passenger turned in shock, their eyes flickering between the tall flight attendant in her polished uniform and the young black boy frozen in the aisle. He clutched his boarding pass tightly in both hands, his eyes wide, his heart pounding in his small chest. A moment ago, he had walked onto the plane with excitement sparkling in his eyes, ready for his very first experience in first class. But in one breath, his joy had been crushed under the weight of those words. And before we go deeper into this unforgettable story, hit that subscribe button. Tell us what country you're watching from, and join this community of truth seekers who know that stories of justice will always rise above injustice. The boy had been buzzing with energy since dawn. He had woken up early, putting on the crisp button-up shirt his mother had ironed the night before, smoothing down his little tie with clumsy fingers. His shoes shone, his hair neatly combed. He had bounced around the house with anticipation, asking his father over and over again, "Are we really flying first class?" His father had smiled and nodded, his heart swelling with pride. This was more than a seat on a plane. This was a lesson, a gift, a memory. The father wanted his son to know that he belonged in the places the world often told him he did not. As they entered the airport, the boy's eyes lit up at every detail. The bustle of travelers, the gleaming counters, the scent of coffee and jet fuel mingling in the air. He clutched his boarding pass as if it were treasure, proudly showing it at the gate. The agent smiled at him, scanning it without a second thought, and waved him forward. His father, dressed in a tailored suit, let him board first, wanting his son to lead the way. And so the boy walked into the aircraft, his steps quick with excitement. He glanced at the rows of plush leather seats in first class, marveling at the extra space, the sparkling glasses of water already set on trays, the pillows and blankets neatly folded. For a moment, he felt like he was stepping into a dream. This was it. He belonged here. But then came the voice, sharp, cold, cruel. The flight attendant's eyes narrowed as she took in the sight of him. She looked at his boarding pass, then back at him, her lip curling into a sneer. And then she raised her voice, so the whole cabin could hear. "You don't belong here. First class is not for kids like you." The words slammed into the boy like a physical blow. His chest tightened, his hands shook, his face flushed crimson. Passengers turned, some gasping softly, others frowning. But no one spoke. The boy tried to stammer an explanation, but the attendant cut him off with a dismissive wave, her voice dripping with disdain as she told him to head to the back of the plane. The boy's shoulders sagged. His shoes suddenly felt heavy. His boarding pass crumpled slightly in his trembling fingers as he lowered his head and began to shuffle down the aisle. The humiliation was suffocating. He could feel the eyes of strangers burning into him, could hear whispers, could feel the shame pressing down on him like a weight. His first-class dream had turned into a nightmare. But what the flight attendant didn't see, what she couldn't possibly know, was the man just a few steps behind. His father, silent, watching, his eyes dark with fury, his jaw tight, his fists clenched at his sides. He had let his son board first, wanting him to shine. Instead, he watched his boy be stripped of his joy in front of an entire cabin. And in that moment, his heart cracked open. Memories flooded back. He saw himself as a child, being told he didn't belong. He remembered being pulled aside in school, told to aim lower. He remembered walking into boardrooms as a young man. The whispers, the stares, the subtle comments meant to remind him he wasn't welcome. And now, here it was again, this time directed at his son. The boy he had worked so hard to shield from the ugliness of the world. The humiliation was unbearable, but he did not act immediately. He waited. Because sometimes justice is most powerful when it arrives like a storm, sudden, undeniable, unstoppable. The father was not just a man in a suit. He was a leader, a powerful executive, the very man whose company held multi-million-dollar contracts with the airline. But in that moment, he wasn't thinking about business. He was thinking about his son's dignity, about the lesson this moment would etch into the boy's heart forever. Would his son learn to bow his head and accept disrespect? Or would he learn to stand tall and claim his rightful place? The doors closed, the engines hummed to life, the safety demonstration began. The flight attendant continued her rounds, straightening pillows, pouring drinks, her face smug with the belief that she had done her job. She smiled at other passengers, her arrogance intact. But she had no idea that her downfall was already in motion. Minutes into the flight, the father stood. His movement drew every eye. His presence was commanding, his posture tall, his gaze unflinching. He called the attendant over, his voice calm but resonant, filled with the kind of authority that doesn't need to shout. The cabin fell silent. Passengers leaned forward, sensing that something monumental was about to unfold. The flight attendant walked over, her smile faltering as she met his gaze. She saw in his eyes something she hadn't expected: power, authority, a force greater than her uniform. He spoke, his words measured, deliberate. He revealed who he was: not just a father, not just a passenger, but the very man who held sway over her career. He told her, in front of everyone, that what she had done was cruel, discriminatory, and utterly unacceptable. Her face paled, her lips parted in shock, her body trembling. And then came the words that sealed her fate. He told her she was finished, that her services were no longer required, that her arrogance had cost her everything. Gasps filled the cabin. Some passengers covered their mouths, others nodded in agreement. The boy looked up, his eyes wide as his father's voice echoed like thunder through the cabin. The flight attendant stammered, tried to defend herself, but it was too late. The captain was notified, supervisors alerted. By the time the plane touched down, her badge and uniform would be stripped away. The authority she had clung to so tightly had turned to dust in her hands. Meanwhile, the boy sat tall in his first-class seat, his father beside him. His humiliation had been transformed into empowerment. His father leaned close, reminding him silently that no one could ever decide where he belonged. He belonged wherever his destiny carried him, and no one, no matter their uniform, could take that away. As the plane descended, the story was already spreading. Passengers whispered, texting friends, posting online. The tale of the arrogant attendant and the powerful father began to ripple outward. By the time they landed, it was more than an incident, it was a symbol. The boy walked off the plane taller than he had boarded. The memory of humiliation still lingered, but the lesson of justice burned brighter. His father had not only defended him, he had given him an inheritance of courage. The boy now knew that when the world told him he didn't belong, he had the right to claim his space, to stand tall, to sit in the seat that was rightfully his. The flight attendant's career ended in disgrace, but the boy's story was just beginning. That moment would shape him, fuel him, carry him into the future as a man who would never again bow his head to prejudice. He would remember the sting of those words, but he would also remember the power of justice when it arrives in full force. So, let this story live in you. When the world tells you that you don't belong, when someone tries to strip you of your dignity, remember the boy in the cream shirt and polished shoes. Remember his father's calm strength. Remember that justice can come in an instant, and that no one can take away the seat destiny has reserved for you. If it touched you, hit that subscribe button now. Comment the country you're watching from. and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that dignity matters. Justice is real, and no one is too small to stand tall. Stay tuned for the next story, you won't want to miss it.